Well, hello everybody and welcome to another episode of GU Cast. This is Declan Murphy, urologist here at Peter Mac in Melbourne, joined as ever by Dr. Renu Eapen, my colleague. Hi Renu.
Hey there Declan, great to be back.
Yeah, pre-Christmas now, we're all feeling jolly.
I know, it's getting close, isn't it? It's crept up on us this year though.
Yeah, and our topic is going to suit the merriment of Christmas, I think.
Absolutely, this is our Christmas special, it's fantastic.
And we're going to get on to our topic in a second. Actually, maybe, shall we play a little clip about it? And it'll be sort of, what are these guys talking about? Shall we do that with the audience before we get going? Let's do that. Let's do that. Here we go.
The first one, wow.
I think it was at the library.
The 1996 Olympics.
Nicole Greenbaum's bar mitzvah.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it.
Well, when you get it, it's kind of on your mind nonstop, you know.
I remember really wanting to get mine for the first time. And when I finally did.
Shall we stop there?
That's when you start to clue in on what they're talking about.
Yes, and we are going to get back to that, the main topic of the day. But before we do, any news in urology?
There's always news in urology, but there is one big news, right?
Okay.
NCCN guidelines.
Oh, yes. We did a podcast about that recently.
We did do a podcast about that.
Because what happened again? In September, they changed the updated guidelines, and in low-risk prostate cancer, what happened? They struck off preferred for active surveillance. And we got all
There was uproar.
There was uproar, a big Twitter storm.
We had Matt Cooperberg and poor Ashley Ross, who did such a great job.
He really did. He did his best. And there was a bit of an uproar. And then last week, what happens?
They've put it back on the menu.
Flipped it off again. It's now preferred with some caveats. But I think a good little victory. So well done to everyone who's involved in that campaign.
Can we take a little credit for that, Declan?
GU Cast pressure.
Social media.
So. Yeah, we had
podcast.
We had a lot of listeners and hits on that. So
yeah, but that's good though.
Yeah, I think low risk prostate cancer, active surveillance is preferred. It's not for everyone, but it should be preferred. You know,
the world is normal again.
But on to today's topic. So we played a little intro at the start on one of the best campaigns I've seen in a long, long time. And what's it called? Hashtag Save the Future Boners.
I don't know how you found this. I mean, you texted me this clip and I was just... it was incredible, wasn't it?
I don't know how I found it before you. Probably just because, anyway, I found it on Twitter. It was just suddenly being retweeted.
Yeah.
And basically, the hashtag Save the Boners campaign is what we're going to talk about today. It's a campaign run by a bunch of urologists in the US who call themselves Urologists United for Vaccination Education. We'll put the links in the show notes and on the YouTube channel. But they've got a great Twitter feed. And then, you know, out of the blue, or certainly on my radar about a month ago, they have a Twitter feed. And then there's this absolutely fantastic video, and we've got the links here, and we played you a little bit of the intro, and so it's all about trying to encourage men to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Why? To save granny and to save the future. It's a totally different message.
Well, I mean, we're so over COVID news, really,
yes,
and vaccination news, but this is definitely worth a mention because it's a really effective campaign, I think.
And we're going to get into the detail of what the message is and why it's effective and all that. But I'm delighted to say we're joined by two fantastic urologists from the US, two great female urologists, both of them who have subspecialist interests in sexual medicine, and they're very much behind this campaign. So
this is the last time we'll call them sexual medicine doctors. From now on, they're penis doctors.
They are doctors of the penis, and you'll see why when you watch the video. But yeah, it's a great pleasure to welcome to GU Cast today Dr. Amy Pearlman, urologist from Iowa, and Dr. Ashley Winter, urologist from Portland, Oregon. Welcome, ladies. Nice to see you, and thank you very much for joining us on GU Cast.
It's so good to be here.
Well, terrific. Look, thank you so much. And first of all, congratulations on this great campaign, this hashtag Save the Boners campaign that both of you have been very involved with. And you'll see in the link on the website, a lot of other urologists have been involved as well. But Amy, do you want to just tell us at the start what this campaign is about? We've given a few teasers on it here. There's a great video. We'll play a little bit more of it later on. But what is hashtag Save the Boners all about?
I would be honored to talk to you more about this campaign. So Gordy is he works in Chicago and he has a production company, and he had reached out to a bunch of urologists who are active on social media and asked us to be a part of this campaign. In fact, his company actually was working with North Carolina on a campaign, this exact campaign, and they had proposed this idea. And at the end of the day, they weren't, the state was not super interested in doing something quite of this nature, but their company felt so strongly about educating people and about encouraging people to get vaccinated funded, that they decided they were just going to do it out of their pockets and actually support this campaign with their own financial means. And so I take zero credit for any of the awesome content in this video. I'm grateful that I was able to participate in some small way. I would say my biggest contribution was I helped wrangle a bunch of urologists onto a Zoom call so that we were able to move this initiative forward. But really the campaign is, we are urologists, we specialize in sexual health. Pretty much all of us have gone into several $100,000 worth of debt because we care so much about the sexual health and genital organs. And just at the basic level of what sickness can do to the body and what sickness, irrespective of COVID specifically, can do to erections, it only makes sense that if you get sick from something, you know, and if it's even COVID, then of course it can affect erections. Yeah. So there are so many different proposed mechanisms. But the basis of this campaign is we care about you. We care about your health. We care about your sexual health. So how do we encourage you to take care of yourself?
And us men sometimes do need help to help ourselves, don't we? And Ashley, so and on the website there are some links to sort of the data behind this. But one of the big standout headlines, Renu, was something like, if you catch COVID, you are 6 times more likely to suffer erectile dysfunction. Can you tell us a bit more, Ashley, about that story or about that data?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few studies coming out that have come out kind of looking at, you know, populations of men, you know, comparing obviously those who have had COVID and not, and essentially just showing, you know, increased rates of erectile dysfunction. You know, the mechanism perceived behind that is that COVID affects the endothelial cells, which are, you know, the smooth muscle cells in the penis, you know, that help the blood flow and help you with your erections. And that essentially, you know, if you have a virus that is attacking, you know, various body tissues, but especially, you know, part of that being the penis, that it's something that's very overlooked, you know, with a respiratory virus, the fact that it can have effect, you know, out on other parts of the body. So I think, you know, just awareness of that general concept was the, you know, overarching kind of data point that the campaign wanted to get forward.
I think that's important, isn't it? Because, you know, there may be the specific mechanisms of how COVID affects erectile function. But like Amy was saying, if there is something generally bad that happens to your body, of course it's going to affect your erectile function. And most people don't make that connection. And it's important to make it obvious and put it out there.
And one of the links on the website references this Italian study from earlier this year, where they showed that in a big bunch of men, they compared men about the age of 40 to men who had COVID and hadn't had COVID. And those guys that had COVID, like in their 40s, perfectly well, had, this 5.5 times higher rate of erectile dysfunction. So it's quite a striking message, isn't it? Yeah. And the other link that was on the website that is very visual for us men, I think, as well, is that there's a study from some of your colleagues in Miami looking at how long COVID particles can persist following an infection. And they showed in some cases that under scanning electron microscopy, you could see COVID in the penis 6 and 8 months later. So I think these messages are very visual for men, and whilst we have, you know, politicians and public health officials hammering home messages about why you should get vaccinated and boosted, I think these messages are much more effective. Amy, are you finding, is that the way it's being received? Is this getting people's attention, this type of a headline?
You know, I create a lot of Twitter content, mostly with my puppy Lexi. Yes. And I would say none of my other content has gotten as many views as this video has. And, you know, I've had patients and other people say that they saw the video, and, you know, I've been pleasantly surprised with how it's been received. You just never know when you have something that you're involved in that's so controversial. But I've been pleasantly surprised. But I do think that we do need to touch on some of the limitations of some of the studies that have been published. And I think that's where, you know, some people might get some backlash, or people who are researchers who look at that information and say, you know what, that research was actually a bit flawed. It's not perfect. So I do want to acknowledge some of those limitations because like any study, every study has limitations. And I almost feel like the power of that message becomes even more powerful when you say it wasn't perfect, but this is what we know from that information. So let's talk about that Italian study that was published earlier this year. There weren't that many patients involved. So there were 75 patients who had a reported history of COVID, and then they matched it with 25 patients with no reported history of COVID. And they used a questionnaire, the Sexual Health Inventory for Men, to better understand, who had erectile dysfunction and their degree of erectile dysfunction. They also looked at other factors here like psychological status, age, and body mass index. So they did account for some other variables in these populations of men. But it was a small sample size. I mean, you think about all the men out there. I mean, this was 75 and 25. Yeah. And then there are so many other variables that are going to contribute or have been associated with erectile dysfunction that simply were not captured in this study. So there are a lot of confounding variables that were not measured. And so we have to consider those as well. When any guy comes in to see someone like, me or Ashley in the office, there are probably 5 reasons or diagnoses that we can list off or put in the chart as contributors to their erectile dysfunction. But there are probably 10 to 20 other factors that we just didn't know to ask about, that our patients didn't tell us, or that we just haven't identified. So those are not going to be captured in this study. So there was a small number of patients. They used a questionnaire, a lot of factors that weren't captured, but it just adds to the existing body of literature to support that it might be associated with COVID infection. What the study also showed is those with erectile dysfunction were more likely to have been diagnosed with COVID. So it actually works both ways, but certainly no ability for us to say there's cause and effect.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. We're not getting too stuck down on the diving deep into the academic side of this.
I think we should play more of the video.
Do you think so?
Yeah, let's play. Yeah.
But thank you for the nice disclaimer. Yes, must be replicated. On this podcast, we have lots and lots of serious academics, and we dissect all sorts of oncology trials. But I just like the message, And nowadays, I don't even read abstracts. I only read what Twitter says and what the hashtag says.
Declan's going to be in your next video.
Exactly. But thank you for that. But yeah, shall we play a bit more of the video?
I think Ashley was just going to say something. Yeah. Sorry, Ash.
Oh yeah. The only thing I was going to say, I agree, 100% with everything Amy says. It's absolutely amazing. I think the true power in all of this is, one, obviously there's a demographic that maybe thought, hey, COVID doesn't affect me as much, right? Oftentimes younger, healthy men who sexual function is really important to. And also you're framing the conversation in words that haven't been used a lot, right? Like we're all saying, we're sick of COVID talk. We're sick of hearing ICU. We're sick of talking about ventilators. We're sick about talking about long COVID. We're sick about talking about masks. And the word penis and erectile dysfunction are just words that haven't been watered down by this discussion over the past 2 years. So I think breaking into that with something that hasn't been overly politicized and hasn't been overly done is really important, kind of making the discussion really focused on what is the effect of your health and taking everything out of it, so.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So important. Yeah. And it does capture a slightly different audience when you do that then. If you're, and that's what we'll do when we play a little bit more of the video. Like this is a conversation about boners, as you'll hear, and then suddenly COVID will arrive into it. Shall we have a listen to a bit more? Okay, here we go. We'll play back again.
I get one. I try to hang on to it as long as possible.
It's an extension of myself. There's honestly nothing quite like them.
If I couldn't have one, it would be devastating. And kind of boring.
Men who have had COVID are 6 times more likely to develop erectile dysfunction.
I'm sorry, what? 6 times more likely?
That's correct.
What are you guys doing? Go get the vaccine. We're talking about your future boners here, okay? I mean, I would cut off my own dick to protect my future boners. Okay, as I think about it, it doesn't make sense logically to cut off my own dick to save my future dick. But you know what I'm saying. It's just important.
It's actually pretty simple.
Get vaccinated, guys.
Do it for your penis.
Love it.
Do it for your penis, and we'll come back and play. The closing moments are brilliant. So if you haven't watched the video, if you click on the link, watch right till the end. It's totally fantastic. But that's actually exactly what Ashley just said. This is introducing a different vernacular, a different narrative, and you know what? That's probably going to reach a slightly different population as well. This is not Fauci type language, is it? But maybe he should use this type language.
I would love Fauci to use this language. I'm waiting.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
So the other, message of this video is we're getting at the whys. So why get vaccinated? Or, in other conversations, why stop smoking? And we can't assume that telling someone it's going to increase your risk of being on a ventilator or dying, we can't assume that's going to resonate for everyone. So it's getting at this billion-dollar industry of sexual health restoration and saying that, my folks, is why. And if you don't care about the other stuff, that's fine, but you're going to capture a different area of the population, who's interested in that. And so we just have to go back to the basics of asking the people in our community, what's important to you? It might be your lungs, it might be your heart, and it might be your dick.
Totally right. Now,
that's right.
Amy, we know you got to rush to the OR. You've got an emergency case. So if you need to rush off, you got to rush off. And I've just they're going to test the evacuation alarm.
No.
I think this is a conspiracy theory, by the way. This is somebody doesn't want us talking about this business. The anti-vaxxers are outside triggering alarms saying, stop talking about this stuff. So if Amy has to dash off, or if we have to mute because of the fire alarm, then that's just part of the fun.
But if you can stay, Amy, stay.
Yes, and then just disappear.
Because I have a question for you. So we know that the vaccination doesn't necessarily prevent a COVID infection. People who are vaccinated can still get a COVID infection. So have you seen an increase in anxiety in these men who are double vaccinated, have had their boosters, then develop a COVID infection? Now they're thinking, oh my gosh, what's happening to my erectile function?
I have not seen that in my office. I don't know, Ashley, have you seen that at all?
I haven't seen that specifically. No.
But are you concerned that this sort of message may cause some anxiety around that in the general population? I mean, the message is very important, get vaccinated. But for those who have done the right thing, who have been vaccinated and still get COVID, is there any reassurance that the vaccine maybe decreases the effect that COVID has on erectile function?
I think I would just use the same research that we have, that people who have been vaccinated don't get as sick. And I think we can use that same logic, when it comes to erectile dysfunction. And like everything else in life, there are no guarantees. And so I think that's the message that we have to tell anyone when it comes to, vaccine success or any therapies, is these are the risks, these are the benefits. My hope is that it reduces these risks, but you know what? It's still possible that you can get an infection, that you can get erectile dysfunction. But the beauty of what Ashley and I get to do when it comes to sexual health is there are actually very few people in whom we can't restore function. So I think it's okay to tell people that you might have a drop in sexual function related to COVID, related to the COVID vaccine, or 100 other things, but we can still help you regardless of the reason. As long as you're alive, And if you're alive, we can help you. But if you're not alive, then it's a moot point.
Yeah.
How fantastic.
I have said to somebody at some point that their penis wouldn't work very well if they were dead. So that does come up occasionally.
It's just, and are you getting feedback over there? Do you think there's a little bit of traction? Has it taken off a little bit? Do you think it's reached into audiences that were the target audiences? Is it getting pushed around on social media a little?
I will say most of my don't follow me on Twitter, so it's hard for me to say. Ashley has a much bigger Twitter following.
That's a podcast in itself, Ashley. Your Twitter following, seriously.
I mean, most of my patients don't also follow my Twitter, which is probably for the best, because it's a little zany. But there are occasionally ones who do, and unfortunately, I think that the majority of the patients that follow me are people who are in the medical community. I think for the most part are pretty pro-vaccine. And that does come to, part of the issue when we have kind of siloed, discussions in social media. That said, and maybe some of you saw this, I did have a tweet about talking to a man during his vasectomy about the effect of COVID on the penis. And that went fairly viral. It got about 40,000 likes. And when I saw that was taking off, I linked the video for this campaign because I thought that was important, and it really boosted the exposure. And actually, people like Dr. Ken, of the Hangover fame and various other, he has like 1 million followers. He retweeted it twice, actually. So thankfully, through that process, I think we've been able to distribute it beyond the people that I, typically talk to. And there are definitely, individuals who have 1 million or more followers who are retweeting that message. And I think that is the reason we're really on social media, right? I mean, not so that everybody knows every dumb thought that comes into my head, even though you can learn that on Twitter, but it's to also get, humanize these discussions. So.
And I think the other point too, like any of us, when we see patients in the clinic, is we operate and we prescribe medications and we do procedures and we do research. But at the end of the day, we're educators, we're communicators. And so if any of our patients or people on Twitter look at that message and they say, you know what, I understand the risks, I understand the benefits, and it just isn't going to work for me where I want to get vaccinated. You know what? I take no personal offense because honestly, it has nothing to do with me. And so if people decide that that's just not how they want to proceed, that's okay. That's okay. And none of us should actually be offended by that.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And look, I really like that idea that it just taps into a different audience. And we might try and do the same because it's pretty much a US message we were talking about, Renu, weren't we? But we, the 75% of our listeners and viewers from here in Australia are actually outside the US, 25% in Europe, 25% US, and 50% rest of the world. So we'd love to tap this out as well to some of the rest of the audience. And as you said, not the sort of typical followers, Ashley, but tap into some advocacy groups. And our friends here in Movember who are based in Melbourne love getting these messages out, and they're good at it. So we'll see can they give it a push out, and it's great. And I suppose what's next is there another follow-on video from this as well? Hashtag save the what else. I love these fantastic female urologists trying to save us men from our
Ashley
destiny.
And I will have to talk to Gordy. We'll see. I gotta
oh yeah.
Take care, Amy. Good luck.
Thanks,
bye.
Amy. Thanks, Amy.
I think we'll have to do a sequel, Save the Balls or something.
While we have Ashley for the last few minutes, have you any favorite bits out of her Twitter feed? I can pick lots out. I mean,
oh my gosh.
the zany, lovely word, but it's very good. It's very effective. And look, I love social media, and I learn quite a bit on it. I use it to curate my my interest in GU oncology. But it's one of my main entertainment channels. I love being slightly entertained, and the sort of people you pick to follow is a bit of prostate cancer in there, some UK politics. I like sort of watching them tear each other apart, and I love a little bit of puppies, or what sort of rims has Ashley got on her glasses today, and what about these shoes, etc., etc. But have you any favorite?
Oh gosh, I've got quite a few. It's hard to. You put me on the spot now, Declan.
You guys are making me blush.
Yeah, well, look,
my gosh,
it is great. It's very good, and being able to use it again for advocacy type stuff is very good, isn't it?
And I think the fact that you're just you don't hold back. I mean, you use the words that you're supposed to use. There's often there's the little eggplant picture that she puts on, and this is for fractured penis. But
no, I mean, sorry.
No, I mean it's a really good way of reaching out to people. But my question to you, Ashley, is how do you decide what to tweet? What is your thought process?
It's a great question. When I first was starting on Twitter, I would overthink it. I think I would spend a lot of time being like, let me plan this message, or let me tweet out this abstract. And then I started to realize that, me just saying, this is an interesting abstract, here's the conclusion, that just isn't what. It's not maybe like when people are at a conference and they want to see what the main presentations are, that's helpful. But most of the time people are looking for we have no attention span. Give me a crazy piece of information or something relatable. And so what started to happen is that I decided to just, when something came into my mind that had one of my core themes, which is, sex is normal, make fun of genitals, make fun of my husband, or talk about, clothes and makeup. If it falls under any of my core themes in life, that I would just tweet it out. Now, certainly when it comes to things regarding, patients, always making sure that there's no, patient identifiers is important. And with those sort of tweets, then I do, kind of write it and save it to my drafts and then do it at at a different time. So it's not like somebody, like walks out of their apartment and out of their appointment and says, "Oh, my doctor's tweeting about me." So and sometimes there's, slight fictionalized components to the, back and forth banter that I theoretically have in the office. But and that's it. It's just kind of been a natural evolution of just saying things that come into my head. I think a lot of it also came from the fact that I realized at some point my Twitter feed was mostly a lot of politics and outrage and people complaining. And the world is a really negative place right now. And I was just tired of that. And I just said, I'm going to try to be fun and educational and talk about silly things sex and see who's along for the ride. And it has made Twitter just an absolutely fun and enjoyable place for me to be. So
that's awesome.
Well, let me say to you, I think another thing you do very well is having been involved in this for a few years as well, and having written a few of the guidelines for BJUI and European urology, for a serious healthcare professional, which you are, of course, getting the balance right between being serious, I am a serious doctor, I look after serious problems, and entertaining is a balance that's sometimes difficult to do, but I think you do it really, really well.
You do it very well.
And it is in these times when you want to be scrolling through your Twitter feed, and as I say, I use this to curate stuff I'm interested in, but I like to have a little bit of lightheartedness, and your Twitter feed, which we'll put in the links, does that, I think, really, really well without looking ridiculous. But some of the stuff you do is zany and out there, and I presume your comedian husband approves of all this and how you bring it all in. But I think it's a nice balance, and not everyone. And it's difficult to get it right because you don't want to be just zany and silly. People think, well, she's not serious or he's not serious. I'm not. Right. I'm not letting him do an operation on me. So it is important to get the balance right and be professional. But I think you got the balance right. You're the one.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hey, we should play the end of that video.
We will. We'll wrap up. So while we still have you listening, and before we dial off, there's a few little great moments at the end. So here we go.
Our favorite bits.
Yeah, here we go.
Trust us. We're penis doctors.
which is followed soon after by...
Listen to the doctors. These are penis doctors, not just your normal doctors. These are doctors of the penis. They went to a penis college where they studied everything that there is to know about your penis.
Well, it's been great to have two fantastic doctors of the penis on the podcast today. Dr.
Thank you for being such a fantastic penis, Dr. Ash.
Thank you, Dr. Ashley Winter and Dr. Amy Pearlman. But so thank you so much. Yeah. And will you come back sometime and have a chat with us? We can just find other stuff to talk about.
I would absolutely love to come on anytime. And I apologize, just hopping on at the end of my clinic day here, for...
That's all right. And
any lags or technical issues, but yeah, I would love to come on.
And we'd love to have you down here. Come on Absolutely. Down to Australia. We'll find an excuse when life goes back to normal.
I was there once. I've never been to Melbourne though, but yeah, I went there once.
Got to make it happen.
It was very far.
That's it. Well, it still is. It hasn't changed. Hasn't moved.
I know.
Anyway, thank you so much, Ash. That's all we have time for on GUcast today. We'll post this out, and we're going to push this campaign. It's a great campaign. I totally love it.
Save your future bonus.
Save your future bonus. Hashtag save your bonus. Get out there, boys. Get yourself vaccinated or boosted or whatever, and save those future boners. That's all we have time for on GUcast. One more, I hope, before Christmas, and then we'll be back in the new year. Thank you.